Hello and welcome back to yet another video on the Alejandro Hernandez podcast. This is going to be my official breakdown and game prediction for today's national championship between the University of Miami and the Indiana Hoosiers. This is a crazy matchup. The build-up leading up to this national championship has been really, really good. You got two teams that have very different storylines. You look at Indiana, I think they're the bigger story in this game. Just the massive 180 turnaround that the program has had under head coach Curt Cignetti has been unbelievable. They've gone from one of, if not the worst all-time in terms of winning percentage program in all of college football history to now suddenly a college football powerhouse. They have won 15 games this year. They're 15-0, flawless record, have the second biggest point margin of victory in a season in all of college football history. They've been just utterly dominant. They dog-walked Alabama 38-3 in the college football playoff and then followed it up with a 56-24 blowout against Oregon in the semifinal. So Indiana has just been an absolute force to be reckoned with this college football season. And on the other hand, you have Miami, who has just owned this underdog mentality the entire season. They've been disrespected, they've been doubted, they've been counted out, and they've proved all those doubters wrong leading up to this game. So you got Indiana versus Miami. This is going to be my official prediction, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the line for this game is set at -7.5 in favor of Indiana, and the money line is set at plus 250 for Miami. So once again, Miami is big underdogs in this spot, and the game is expected to be a blowout in favor of Indiana, and I don't see no reason as to why it can't be. You look at Indiana's track record this year, I just mentioned previously how they blew out Alabama and Oregon in their first two playoff games, and they've just been blowing teams out left and right all season. In this particular game, they have the better coach, the better quarterback, and they execute better on offense and defense. And they don't have the most talented players, but their coaching staff just has this team so well coached, and they make no mistakes, and they capitalize on all the mistakes that the other team makes. So for that reason, Indiana should be favored by a touchdown in this game. And another trend that I've noticed in this spot is that in the national championship, the past 7 national championship games have all been blowouts. And I'll list them for you right here. In 2025, Ohio State beat Notre Dame 34-23. In 2024, Michigan beat Washington 34-13. In 2023, Georgia beat Alabama 33-18. In 2022, Georgia beat TCU 65-7. In 2021, Alabama beat Ohio State 52-24. In 2020, LSU beat Clemson 42-25, and then in 2019, Clemson beat Alabama 44-16. So the past 7 national championships have not been remotely close, and if that trend were to continue, in this case, it would mean that Indiana would blow the brakes off of Miami. However, despite everything I just said about Indiana, all the compliments I gave Indiana, all the facts stating as to why Indiana should win this game by blowout, and the trends in the past as to why each national championship has been a blowout, and this one could be too, screw all that. Because Miami has been the team to say, screw all that. Miami has been the team that has been counted out, has been disrespected, has been just basically thrown to the side and said, you can't do it. And what they have done is proved all the doubters wrong time and time again. And before I get into how the team has proved the doubters wrong leading up to this game, I want to start with the quarterback, Carson Beck. This guy has gone through so much adversity throughout his college football career. And it starts back in his career in Georgia. At Georgia, he got injured. I believe it was before the Alabama game, and Gunnar Stockton took over and led the team to a championship. And from that point on, Carson Beck was kind of viewed as this quarterback who cannot win the big game. He's the starting quarterback for Georgia. That's holding the team back from winning a national championship. He performs bad in big games. He throws too many interceptions. He makes too many mistakes. He was scapegoated out of Georgia because everybody said that they cannot win the Natty because he was the person that was holding them back and that he could not lead this team to a national championship. That was the narrative surrounding Carson Beck. So for that reason, he could have declared for the NFL draft, but his draft stock had plummeted obviously due to all these narratives and his play on the field. So what he did was he took more money in college and transferred to Miami to rebrand himself, to make something of himself, and to prove all those doubters wrong, saying that he could not win the big game, that he makes too many mistakes in big games, and that he cannot lead a team to a national championship, especially a team like Georgia, who had all the talent in the world surrounded around him. He goes to Miami and plays a hell of a season and rebuilds his brand. And He went into many big games. The big game against Notre Dame, everybody doubted him, saying, well, I don't think Carson Beck is capable of having a good game against a top-tier opponent. He went out and balled out against Notre Dame and beat them in the clutch and made many great throws in that game. And then in other big games over the course of the season, against Florida, against FSU, he played flawlessly. And then he had 2 bad games against 2 ACC opponents, and those 2 games probably should have and could have just eliminated Miami from the playoff altogether, because losing to 2 non-ranked teams in the conference is obviously not a good thing to have on your record, and you pretty much need to have a flawless season to make the college football playoff. But this is the reason why they expanded the playoff from 4 teams to 12. It's because of a team like Miami who can afford to slip up against 2 bad opponents, but when they play the great opponents, they play up to the level of their competition, and they held their own against Notre Dame. So you look at Carson Beck's whole redemption story, and in the college football playoff against Ole Miss, he had probably the best game of his career and led a fourth quarter game-winning drive. So Carson Beck has overcome all this adversity. And now let's talk about how Miami as a team has overcome all this adversity. You look back when they were supposed to make the college football playoff, when it was between them and Notre Dame. Everyone was making the argument for Notre Dame because Notre Dame didn't lose to a Louisville, and how Notre Dame should have made it in because they played better opponents over the course of the season. However, the thing that made Miami, or the determinant factor as to whether Miami should have or not made the college football playoff, was beating Notre Dame head-to-head. But people were still arguing that Notre Dame should have been in over Miami despite the head-to-head record. Well, why do we play the games? We play the games to determine who's better than the other team. Why are we going to let Notre Dame into the college football playoff when Miami beat them straight up? So obviously the committee made the right decision letting Miami into the college football playoff, and that decision pretty much launched everything that's happened. They were the rightful choice. They were the right choice because they went on to upset Texas A&M and to upset Ohio State. In their first matchup against Texas A&M, they entered that game having to go to Texas A&M, and they were 3.5-point underdogs, and they wind up winning that game outright due to great defensive play and the run game. And Mark Fletcher dominated that game on the ground. I believe he had over 170 rushing yards, and then defensively they only allowed 3 points. So that was an excellent performance at Texas A&M to get that victory as underdogs. That following week, 9.5-point underdogs against Ohio State. They dominate the game defensively. They make Julian Sain uncomfortable. He throws multiple picks. They get a ton of pass rush with Ruben Bain, and that whole defensive front just made Julian Sain uncomfortable the entire game. Carson Beck managed the game on offense, and Miami cruised to a 10-point victory. So Miami pretty much, it was a pretty close game, but it felt like Miami was in control through all 4 quarters of that game. And when you look at the common opponents between Miami and Indiana, who played Ohio State better? It was Miami. Indiana could only beat them by 3 points, 13-10. Miami beat them 24-14. So Miami did have the better performance against their common opponent in Ohio State. So when you look at just Miami's run to this point, it's just been, they've been doubted. Their quarterback's been doubted. Their team's been doubted. Their team's been disrespected time and time again. They've been counted out, and they have overcome adversity time and time and time again, which is why I'm going to pick them to upset Indiana in this spot. Give me Miami. The money line at plus 250, I will be betting it, and I believe they are capable of upsetting Indiana, and I'll list those reasons right now. So like I said earlier on in this video, the margin for error is like this for Miami. Indiana is a flawless team. They take advantage of other teams' mistakes, and they don't make mistakes themselves. Now, a pathway for Miami to win this game is through their elite defense. Their defensive front, Ruben Bain, has to dominate this game in order for Miami to win. If they end up giving big plays up down the field to Mendoza off play action, then they're going to get torched. However, let's establish what Indiana wants to do on offense. Indiana wants to run the ball to set up the pass. They want to run the ball to set up play action and deep shots down the field. Mendoza is deathly accurate down the field. And the way they do that is they run the football. Teams end up stacking the box, bringing a safety down in the box, and then Mendoza's great throwing outside the numbers on those vertical routes. Now, what Miami is great at is stopping the run. So if Indiana cannot run the ball to set up the pass, then they're just going to have to pass. What Indiana's most successful at is just getting in 3rd and manageables, getting in the 3rd and 2s, the 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. They're great at moving the chains because they stay ahead of the chains. They're never in 2nd and 12, 2nd and 15, 2nd and 18. They're always in 2nd and 7, 3rd and 3, 3rd down conversion. That's how they move the ball up and down the field. And then when teams get aggressive and they try to stop them or blitz them, Mendoza's deathly accurate down the field. So that's how Indiana's been a well-oiled machine on offense. Now, how Miami can disrupt this is with their run defense. Miami has one of, if not the best running defense in all of college football. They only average 3 yards per carry. So if Miami can shut down the run, if Miami can get a first down sack, get Indiana behind the chains, instead of Indiana being in 2nd and 6 or in 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 9, then force a 3rd and long, because what Indiana is not used to is being in 3rd and longs. If Miami can get Indiana in uncomfortable 3rd down situations and get off the field on 3rd down and get the ball back to their offense, I think Miami has a great shot at winning this game and keeping it close. Now for the other side of the ball, Miami's offense against Indiana's defense. I think the biggest determinant factor in this game is Carson Beck's ability to take care of the football. And in the biggest games this season that Miami has played, he has done a good job of that. However, like I said earlier in this video, Indiana makes very minimal mistakes and Miami is prone to making mistakes. So the margin for error for Miami is little to none in this game. This is the margin of error for Miami. Carson Beck cannot afford to turn the ball over, because if he does, Indiana will cash in those points like this. He has to be very cautious with the ball, not put it in harm's way, and he has to trust that his defense will set him up with short fields and give him good field position, and they have to convert points on those drives. So I expect Miami to lean heavily on the run game and on the quick passing game. I expect them to get their playmakers the ball in their hands in space. So toss plays to Mark Fletcher, handoffs up the middle to Mark Fletcher, and then play off play action, get Malachi Tony the ball in space, get their receivers, their elite receivers, the ball in space, get their tight ends the ball in space. That's what I expect Miami to do offensively, and I think that they can control the line of scrimmage both offensively and defensively. That's what Mario Cristobal teams are known for. I think before this game, he's preaching that we must want it more than Indiana. We must be more physical than Indiana on the offensive line and defensive line. I already stated how they can out-physical Indiana's offensive line by stopping the run. I believe by them stopping the run defensively, they will establish the run game of their own offensively. So I expect Mark Fletcher to have at least 20 carries, over 100 yards in this game. And a saying that I love is that big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. And in this particular spot, Miami has those 5-star recruits that Indiana doesn't. So I expect the Ruben Bains, the Mark Fletchers, the Malachi Tonys to make the biggest plays in the biggest moments of this game. And that's why I will be taking Miami to win in an upset. I'm going to take them to win in a close game in the 4th quarter. I think Carson Beck leads a game-winning drive. Give me Miami to win by a score of 24-20. And that is going to be it for this video. And I will see you guys next time for when I release my conference championship predictions for the NFL.